I decided to dress up a little for you today.
Well, you look marvelous. I'm kind of dressed down. I just got back from with my husband and the dog for a 3 mile walk, so I'm I'm a little
Well,
sweaty. I'm in my workout gear.
I feel marvelous.
That's great. I do
I
too.
had, I had an amazing epiphany this morning, and it really relates to what we're about to begin talking about. And I'm pretty sure
Perfect.
that probably going to require several of these sharings
I'm all over it.
to really unpack. But you know this, but many people watching aren't aware of the fact that I have gone from keto to through COVID being dirty keto and gaining weight and feeling like crap to going back to keto and now going full carnivore for the last 6 weeks. And it's not the 20 pounds that I've lost in 6 weeks, but the mental clarity, the homeostasis, the lack of inflammation is actually a very spiritual thing. And people question me about this move
Sure.
out of, and this gets to where we're going to be going, a thought form that's been created by a government, a bunch of white coats. I call it's white coat syndrome. They got white coats on. They're smarter than you. You better listen to them, right? And, they created this thought form that fat was bad and sugar was good because it didn't have any calories. And it turns out that it's just the opposite. But
Because it's all dealing with insulin.
right. But that thought form is so strong.
I know it is.
All of us who grew up in the 70s and 80s, and some of us maybe even in the 60s listening, that's all we heard.
Right.
Fake butter, low fat.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, good old margarine.
Right. So it turns out that eating lots of sugar, lots of refined carbohydrates, lots of seed and vegetable oils, if one doesn't fast, you're going to figure out where I'm going real fast. If one doesn't fast, on the subject of intermittent fasting, with the standard American diet, you've got to go at least 18 hours to get all the glucose out.
Exactly.
And all the other stuff for autophagy to start and start doing away with the inflammation from the seed oils and other stuff. And to even have a prayer to stay away from chronic disease and premature physical death. And I was thinking about that this morning because a lot of people, we have a lot of friends that are very emotional about the idea of eating an animal.
I know.
And it's hard to have the conversation with them without perpetrating spiritual violence upon them.
I know.
But and even if you do have the conversation that everything has consciousness, it doesn't matter what you're eating, they still say, I know, but I can't bear the thought of eating an animal. And that thought form is really, really powerful.
It is.
Spawned, groups like PETA and all this other stuff. And these people even say, I'm not against eating animals. I just can't bear the thought of eating an animal. And when I was in doing my hemisync this morning, I was with this Jesus fella. I was observing a conversation where he said, and they were talking about fasting, and he said, Why should I fast? What sin have I committed? And this is going to take us into our conversation. Trust me.
Perfect. No, I know. I trust you implicitly on this. So just go. Just go.
So think about that, because according to them, he had broken a bunch of them. He was doing stuff on Sabbath, saying my dad is always at work. He was saying stuff like, you're going to follow me, you got to hate your mother and father. You know, he basically whipped out Exodus 20 and went, nope, 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 to the Pharisees until they killed him. But he says to them, why should I fast? What law have I broken? What sin have I committed?
Right.
And this is going to answer a really big question out there for a lot of Christians, people that are still evangelicals and fundamentalists, because their pastor can't explain to them why Jesus would say your law to the Pharisees, and when he was talking about law, he said the law. I know you know the answer to this already, but
I do. That's all good. Just keep going.
Right. So he's saying to them, why should I fast? What law have I broken? Baiting them into talking about Mimosa
right.
ordinances of men.
Right.
And then I got Revelation download, whatever, from this, that one can't bear the thought of eating the animal because of mimosa, not oretta. And again, I'm not saying it's bad. It's part of somebody's experience. But it's important that they understand, I think, become aware of the difference.
Agreed.
And the reason why, and we're going to get into how all this got jumbled up through this conversation, that, you know, this character Paul says, or actually it's Peter, Acts 10, I think it's Acts 10, when the sheet unrolls and all the animals fall out of it. And this was obviously whoever was having this vision, what they were experiencing was oretta.
Yeah, because it's rise up, kill, and eat.
Right. But that was it. They were experiencing that in the heavenly realms.
Right.
Not in the physical realm.
Right.
So they were, in fact, I only do what I hear my father say and see my father do. That's what that is. Why I posted earlier today on Facebook that the love of mammon is placing value or worshiping something outside of you that hasn't been first created inside of you.
So good. So good.
So this idea, and again, if they're getting the idea, or if they're receiving don't eat animals from an experience within, go with it.
Yeah.
But, and this is a big but. So if somebody says to me, Carrie, if somebody comes to me and says, you know what, I get this gravity thing. I hear you. But I just believe God wants me to fly. And they go up every day and jump off the roof. And they break feet, ankles, they're just a physical mess. But they keep telling me, I believe God wants me to fly. Regardless of what Oretta says, because that's where gravity comes from. That I think we're talking about the same thing.
That's a great analogy.
when we're talking about somebody who strongly believes that they're not supposed to eat animals, yet they're starving to death.
And that statement should be clarified as well, because I know exactly what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying when you say that. Because here in where we live, with the process of all the manufactured food, right? And people go to the store and they buy all this food. If you were to say something like that to someone that lives, especially in the United States, has access to all this food, that might even be on food stamps, some sort of an assistance, they would say, I'm not starving to death. But when you look at the quality of the food, not the quantity, if someone is not getting their nutritional needs met through the food that they are eating, they are starving to death.
Right. And that is where it's like the gravity analogy. Well, your bones are getting brittle.
Right.
Your muscles disappearing.
That's right.
You've gone into insulin resistance, which is your body storing calories to fat because it thinks you're dying.
Right. And cognitive.
Right. But that's
your
what
cognitive
I'm saying.
Ability. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, it's like Jesus was talking to the people who were, having sex outside of the male-female arrangement. And he said, look, you can do that, but they're going to make you live down on the trash heap with the lepers if you do. And no, I'm not comparing people who don't eat meat.
I know. But I'm glad you're clarifying it, because someone will probably take it there.
Yes, somebody take it that way. I'm not. I'm just saying that you're everyone via free will, as free as it can be, is experiencing their experience, riding their own ride, learning the lessons they need to learn. If they came to ride a ride that's a little too big for them and they throw up every day, that's their experience. That's all I'm saying.
Their experience through thought forms.
Right. And their thought form was to get on a ride. So, the father, Areta, is the little guy standing there with his arm out to see if you're tall enough to ride the ride. That's what Areta will do. But sometimes we'll go, I'm a big boy, I can handle it. And we'll go ahead and jump on the ride. Yeah. And when we throw up all over ourselves and everybody else and say, I believe God wanted me to ride the ride, that's all fine and dandy. But it is what it is.
Right. Oh my goodness. And just to let you know, when Ken and I were teaching our fitness class, it was a long time ago, but and I know this, but when we were teaching our fitness class, we were beginning to teach people about, like genetically modified foodstuffs and all this other stuff that back then really it wasn't in the spotlight. This was like 12 years ago. It was just starting to come. It was just starting to come out in the open more and more. And I will tell you, some of the most really difficult conversations I've ever had with anyone has been surrounded about food. It is such a personal topic. And even if you try to just bring awareness to something, man, that ego rises up. It just rises up.
It does. And, and what's funny is, I know I said this because I always do, before we got into this last time, was that I don't care what people eat.
I don't either.
Literally
I really don't. I don't care.
Really don't. It's like, it's like I was sharing with you, it's being an observer of consciousness, an explorer and observer of consciousness, can be a tumultuous ride when you try to share observation.
Right.
It's like I equate it to being in the front of a hanging roller coaster. It's the best ride.
Right.
But if you're on the back of the hanging roller coaster, you're not getting the same ride. You're on
No.
the same roller coaster,
Right.
but you're not getting the same ride. And that's why I shared with you this morning or last night or whenever it was, because
We were swapping emails or messages.
I was in a state of consciousness, and I wrote it down just because I've learned my lesson about not writing it down. That, an eagle.
Oh, yes, that was so good. Please share that. That was so good.
So an eagle on the perch, maybe the side of the edge of the nest on a cliff, leaves the perch and soars on the unseen breath of God. And then a human grabs a hang glider, runs and jumps off that same cliff. And he hits those same winds as the eagle. However, he needed something outside of his body to do so. The hang glider is what allowed the human to soar on those very same winds, and then needed a safe place to land because he couldn't return to that perch even with his hang glider. But then there's a third human that flaps his arms, declares I can fly, and jumps off that same cliff to his peril. And, all three of those observations involved the same cliff, only the third person didn't have an experience with the unseen breath of God. That person, because that person was resisting Oreta,
right,
got an intimate relationship with something called gravity.
Which is part of Oreta, the natural laws.
It's the other side of the coin.
Right.
And in a lot of those situations, people will then ask you, why would God let that happen? It's the wrong question. Why weren't you aware of gravity and wind and lift only being there if you have these things called wings? God didn't let anything happen like he's an umpire in the sky. Right?
Yes.
So
I love your analogies and how you word things. I love it.
It's just the easiest way to try to communicate with people. Mm-hmm. And what I was trying to explain in the food analogy is that, yes, you can refuse to eat animal fat and animal protein for whatever reason. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what the guy's reason was for flapping his wings and jumping off the cliff. He still experienced gravity. And for the great majority of people, there are a handful of people for genetic reasons that do better on a vegetarian diet, let's say, because Twinkies and beer is vegan. I wouldn't recommend that. But going on a whole food, some people genetically do better on a whole food, actual food, where the food is one ingredient and then one ingredient is the food.
Right.
However, they still will experience a decrease in bone density and muscle mass, both of which have been shown for a very long time to be correlated with longevity.
Right.
So if that is you, that's fine. Like I said, I don't care what you eat. But the great majority of people who, for an emotional reason, choose to not eat animal protein and animal fat, you will experience muscle loss, bone density loss, cognitive loss, and other things. And I'll just wrap it up with this, because this is, and it's going to trigger some people, but then I'm not going to talk about it. But just try to think about this on a spiritual level. There are two essential nutrients for the human avatar, physical body. Two: amino acids, protein; fatty acids, fat. The fatty acids that are essential only come from animals. Now, people will say, well, I can get all the protein I need from plants, like pea protein and soy protein and all this other stuff, right? That sounds good. Like, you can take you can take 50 grams of animal protein and 50 grams of plant protein side by side, and they appear to be 50 grams and 50 grams. So 50 grams of animal protein, depending on the animal, is mostly bioavailable to the human body.
Right, right.
The 50 grams of plant protein is at best 20% bioavailable. The rest of the 80% is nitrogen, guys. Google is a great tool. Get after it. But I'm telling you, I've researched it. And I'm only saying that to say this: that if you provide the human body with the exogenous exogenous means something from outside the body, nutrients it requires, animal fat and animal protein. In those are the 13 essential vitamins and minerals required for human life. And from that body of nutrition, this is the part that's crazy, and I have a hard time understanding why people argue with this, but from that body of nutrition, the human body can then make all other micronutrients required for human life.
Exactly.
If you're eating the right food, guys, you should not have to take a supplement.
That's right.
Now, if you're trying to get by on on plant protein, you're going to have to take I don't know how you take there is no supplement for a fatty acid outside of a fatty acid from an animal. You can take fish oil and pretend it didn't come from a living fish, but you're going to have to take all kinds of other supplements, and I hate to break this to you, which aren't bioavailable. And I'll just ask you this question: is it better to take a vitamin D supplement, exogenous, or is it better to go out into the sun and get the sun's rays and have your body create the vitamin D? Which one of those is better?
Right.
Or is it better to take a melatonin supplement at night to sleep, or would it be better to get your hormones straight and get your circadian rhythm straight so that your body is making the melatonin at night when the sun goes down? Which one of those two is better? So the way that the human body's been designed is there's a limited two essential nutrients, exogenous nutrients, that the human body is designed to partake in. And from that, all other nutrients can be made, including glucose. The liver,
right, exactly,
makes all the glucose the human body needs to survive. So I'm going to leave it at that. That is the way the human body works. Those are the two exogenous nutrients that are essential for human life, and all other things, if you're eating the right food, the human body will make.
Right. I think, isn't that gluconeogenesis? I think that's a mouthful.
Right.
Yeah, because I researched that a long time ago as well, just to try to figure out, because for me, I developed all these food sensitivities after I had a benzene overload, because I was in the hair and nail. I was in cosmetology for over a decade. Mm-hmm. And I got very sick. I got a benzene overload, which then started leading to other issues in my body that weren't good. And all of a sudden I had all of these allergies, these issues with food. And when I went on an elimination diet, I did not know what to do. I literally did not know what to do, because I cut out all the foods that were inflammatory. And it was like all I could eat without having any inflammation or anything like that was like lettuce and meat. That's it. Nothing else.
So, and you bring up a great point, because there's a great study or series of studies from a professor at a major institution like Harvard or Yale or something, Princeton, Stanford, one of those big schools, who did allergy testing on humans over like a 4, 5, 6 year period, and literally tested millions of people, food sensitivity and environmental sensitivities. And the lowest sensitivity thing that he tested for, out of thousands of things that he tested for, dietary and environmentally, the lowest thing was red meat.
Of course. Of course.
So just add that to the thing. It's like, and the belief that things like kale, which didn't even exist hundreds of years ago, is the belief in that as a superfood. One has to completely ignore the fact that it's full of toxic chemicals to humans called oxalates. They're not toxic to cows. And this will kind of start taking us into our subject. Oxalates at high levels, which kale is one of the highest, results in immediate inflammation in your body. Immediate.
Do you know that I was having a kale smoothie or kale shake every single morning for like almost a decade?
Right. So it is in fact not a superfood. It is a super toxin.
Yeah.
And so this leads us into the biblical and spiritual conversation, because the Bible says that there indeed was a time before the third density time, second density humans, where I gave you green leafy things to eat for food. And that version of human, hominid, had an appendix that was several feet long.
Isn't that amazing?
For consuming such things where they could be fermented.
There you go.
And when you distill or ferment, what happens to toxins?
It gets rid of them.
Correct.
Yep.
We don't have that anymore, which is why the Bible says, now I give you
meat.
All the animals.
Well, it's in there. It's interesting that it's not just meat. It's the word akal, which means all foodstuffs.
Right.
Like it's everything. I give you, just as I gave you the green or the herbs to eat, I am now giving you everything to eat.
Right. Go
ahead. Because this is.
Go ahead.
Okay. Aleph Kaf Lamed is the word for food. King James translated it as meat. So this is like in that Genesis 9, 3-5. I circle the Aleph because this word right here, Kaf Lamed, means all. It means everything. So all and everything, and the Aleph has been added to it. The Aleph is the unseen presence, the energy frequency. Some call it God. It is part of the spirit breath. It is the essence of the unseen that is in and through everywhere. It is the energy of God, of creator, of source. So having said that, if this is the word for food and the Aleph has been added, you could say that in everything that you eat, you are eating God.
Correct. Consciousness.
Right. So everything that you eat has consciousness. We aren't going to eat rocks right? We're not going to eat rocks because it doesn't sustain the consciousness like this. But we are going to end up eating everything that has consciousness to it. And this is the difficulty, is when people take it from an objective standpoint versus subjective. And as soon as we get into subjective, the ego comes in, all of the things that we have been indoctrinated with come in, and we get emotionally stirred. But every time we consume anything, foodstuffs, we are eating consciousness. That includes plants.
Mm-hmm.
And the only difference is that the plants don't have vocal cords. They can't, there is nothing that they can do other than make toxins within them that are eventually going to have an adverse reaction on bodies. My body is a perfect example of it. I could continue to eat the way I wanted to, but what was happening is I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker.
And the plants
so something had to give.
Yeah, so the plants do communicate. There's lots of recent studies on this, and they communicate through the mycelium, which is their internet.
That's right.
The ground has an internet called mycelium. It's fungus, and all the plants communicate through it. And when a being steps in my backyard on the grass on one end, the grass on the other end knows it.
Or if the lawnmower starts up.
Right. Or if you're out there, cutting asparagus, when you cut the first asparagus, the rest of them know. So it's the way consciousness works. But so you bring that in from Genesis 9, then you bring in the apostle, the Paul character, saying, for me, all things are permissible.
Permissible, that's right. But not all things are beneficial. Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
So like I said, you can eat what you want to eat.
Right.
You have the absolute freedom to do that. That would be all food. However, and I did this last time, but it's an analogy. When Jesus told the people who were having sex outside of the male-female thing, he said, look, you can do that. However, this is what they're going to do to you. They're going to make you live down on the trash heap with the lepers. It is that yes, it is for freedom that we have been set free, and all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial. So Peter, in a higher state of consciousness, my contention is probably alpha or higher, has a vision. I don't know how many people have visions in beta. None, as far as I know. I don't think it's possible to have a vision in beta, your regular brainwave reacting to life.
Right.
But Peter has a vision in a higher state of consciousness, and which is the spiritual realm. So here we have Peter worshiping the spiritual realm as reality, literally hearing what the Father says and seeing what the Father, doing what the Father does, hearing what he's doing, what he hears and does.
Right.
In that place. And the sheet unrolls and all the animals fall out, and he hears a voice that says, don't call anything unclean that I've created good, which is all these animals. So here we have somebody in the spiritual realm. In Genesis 9, it was in the physical, and I would say distorted, we're going to get there, I would say distorted masculine realm. And now we have somebody in a distorted feminine realm, post-resurrection and ascension, leaves us the one that leads us into all truth. So someone's in the distorted feminine realm having a vision that doubles down on what Noah got. So, and with knowing scientifically that there are things that you can ingest from outside of your body that your body's designed to receive. However, because all things are permissible, you may eat a bunch of other stuff that your body's not designed to receive. I would just simply ask the question, are you doing what you hear the Father say and see the Father do? Or are you doing what you have received in a beta brainwave in an emotional state because, you know, I'm a hunter, and when I harvest an animal, there is a part of me that's sad.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a greater part of me that's literally in loving your neighbor as yourself mode, because I really don't. It's part of Areta. It's part of the design: rise, kill, and eat. And if I wanted to rest on the emotional thing, you know, I don't discriminately hunt and kill.
Right.
That would also be distorted.
Right. I agree.
So that's where I'm going to leave that, is in that even the character Paul kind of doubles down on that and says, look, you can do anything you want, basically, but if you're doing anything outside of the invisible nature of God, which is since the beginning has been made clearly seen through the creation, if you're ingesting the wrong creation, you're gonna know it. The avatar is going to let you know, and if your avatar is not letting you know, go with it.
Right. I totally agree. I know that what you just shared with regarding Peter in the sheet, because I did have somebody post already, because you did mention that the last time that it had to do with going to Cornelius's house. This is kind of the difficulty I have with our English translations, because when you get in and get underneath it and go into the Aramaic, it's so much greater, so much deeper, so much more vastness is being revealed in those languages, that the difficulty I have is when I engage in conversations with people and they want to bring those English scriptures forth. For me, I just need to step back, because the validity of that English narrative, I just don't hold to it anymore.
But, you know,
although you can see some truth in it, I'm not saying that it doesn't. I just don't. I just look at it and go, okay, well, that's a perspective of someone that translated it for whatever reason.
Yeah, he was going to Cornelius's house, but am I supposed to believe that, oh, okay, eating animals is bad, except if you're going to go into a Gentile's house, it's not. I mean, if you want to look at it that way, like I said, you can. But all of that, the point is not resting on rise, kill, and eat in Acts 10. The whole point is resting on the experience in third density that the two nutrients the human body needs are essential protein and essential fats. That's what it's all resting on. I'm just bringing up things in scripture that are pointing to that. You can throw you can burn the Bible as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
The two nutrients you still are essential to human life are still going to be protein and fat, guys. You know, that's just the way it is.